Good morning, everybody. Welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing. It is Wednesday, the 30th of July. It is game day. I'm Derek Clark, and we're joined by two contributors this morning. First of all, Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua? Fresh from your holidays?
Yeah, fresh from my holidays, but I had a family wedding holiday, so not very fresh, but back, and not as happy as Chris. So what temperature is it, Chris? I'm reluctant to ask because of my jealousy, but tell us anyway. No, maybe he doesn't want to.
Wi-Fi signals not the best on the balcony this morning, but we'll persevere with it, and hopefully we can power on through. How are we both?
Yes, all good, Chris. Busy day for you yesterday, of course, press conference day, and we heard from Russell Martin. We've got a couple of clips to play from him a little later on. But what did you make of it yesterday? You went to the Olympic Stadium, and Rangers will be playing later on this evening, 9 p.m. local time, 7 p.m. back home for those of you, just to make sure you don't miss kickoff. But how did your day unfold yesterday, Chris?
Fairly busy as always, as people will have seen on the site yesterday. A couple of transfer bits and bobs doing the rounds. We had the line on Jose Cifuentes and what the future potentially holds for him. As we understand it, Rangers not looking at another loan deal for him. They want to sell him. They want to get him off the books. And I think that makes a lot of sense. It's the time for loans is probably over for Cifuentes. It's time for him to move on. So had that to do. People will see an opinion piece on the site this morning, kind of looking ahead to the second leg, but having a bigger look ahead to the start of the Premiership campaign this weekend, and which of these is the season-defining game for Russell Martin, as he was asked about it last week. And then, as you say, up to the Olympic Stadium, quite an impressive building from the outside. I didn't get a chance to actually go into the press tribune and onto the press seats. A couple of different entries and exits to get through. So just there for the press conference last night. But we'll head up nice and sharp later on and give people a wee tour of the facilities in the press box and get a first look at that pitch.
Jolly good. Right, before we crack on then, a quick word for our podcast sponsors, Willows Fencing, the great guys at the Glasgow-based fencing company you can trust, and proud partners of the Rangers Review. If you're looking for a new fence, these are the guys to call, folks. They offer free consultations, whether that's a small-scale refurbishment or a large-scale complete fencing project. And you also get a 10% off if you use the code Rangers Review over on their website, willows-fencing.com. Right, as we touched on there, Russell Martin conducting his press conference yesterday. It was interesting to hear about various points, but I think that some of the talk transfers soon, but the headline news, Joshua, is that Tello Asgard and Hamza Igman are not available for this game. He was hopeful that Asgard could make it, but he doesn't want to risk him. And I think that on the positive is that Gassama is fit enough to start. He wasn't fit enough to start the game last week, but he made quite the introduction and is available tonight. I think we'll get your predicted team up a little later on, but I'm starting this lad tonight. What did you make of what he had to say? How big a miss would that be? Although we haven't really seen Asgard as yet, but certainly not having Hamza Igman available is not ideal.
Yeah, mate, this is the frontline week. I don't want to get the team right again because I got accused of being a leak about six times going into Ibrox last week. But I've only made one change from my team, so we shall see. But yeah, it would make the front line. It will make the front line weaker not having either of those two. We've not seen Asgard, but you hear the way that Russell Martin's spoken about him so far, and the bits that you hear from elsewhere. He's someone that's really impressed in training, and I think maybe tops that kind of chart, if you like, so far of players that have raised expectations without seeing them play up until this point. Obviously, we've not even really seen him in friendly action, only behind closed doors games. And Igman picked up what's thought to be just a small injury last Tuesday. He's obviously slightly later back to pre-season, delayed by that visa issue. I'd start Gassama. It gives me some flashbacks to Václav Černý not starting in the second leg against Dynamo Kyiv, first leg? That was the second leg, wasn't it, at Hampden, because he played in the first leg. He played against Motherwell He came on. Sorry, he came on. Tell me if I'm wrong, someone in the comments. But he came on against Kiev away from home and created the goal for Gers. Started against Motherwell, scored that goal, and then only came on the second half in the home leg. I'd start him. I think the question is, do you play him off the left or do you play him off the right? For me, you probably sacrifice Finlay Curtis a little bit, keep him in the team because he's a good runner, because he's scored 2 goals as of late. Although, could you see Kieran Dowell and Gassama being the 2 wide players? Absolutely. I think that's a strong possibility too. But in terms of playing a player off the left tonight, I think Gassama, especially if Rangers have a little bit more space to go into, I'd like to see him in the starting 11 from the off.
Would you go along with that, Chris? I'm with Joshua there, and many others would agree. Certainly one change to the 11. I've said it before, I would be tempted to make a change at left back, but I don't think Russell Martin will do that. Gassama, does he start for you?
I hope so. I think that we're all in agreement that he's a better option than Kieran Dowell. He's a player who could and who can and who has offered something different. He offered more in his time off the bench last week than Dowell did in his time on the pitch. I think he has to start. Like, you look at that impact last week, you think what he can bring to this side. There is no point in trying to save him. There's no point to say, well, he's only been here a fairly short space of time. Let's try and build him up. He's had that game at Ibrox, played at the weekend against Middlesbrough. Russell Martin, the way that he answered that question last night and the way that he spoke about him, I think that indicates that he's going to play. And if Panathinaikos, as we expect, are going to come at Rangers and try and put them under a bit of pressure early on and try and score that first goal early on, if that leaves a bit of space in behind and you can utilise the pace of Gassama and the pace of Curtis, that could be a big advantage for Rangers in those early stages. And I think, as we've said since last week, if Rangers get the first goal tonight, I think that probably kills the tie. As having those 2 wide options, Curtis and Gassama, are the 2 that I would go for.
Yeah, interestingly, Russell Martin was speaking about Gassama, and he said we had the luxury of Sal Bibble, of course, who joined from Sheffield Wednesday, obviously working with him all of last season, and then closed doors games and seeing him every day and understanding the talent and ability he has. He felt this environment would be perfect for him to grow and continue improving. So early days, but Gas is a player that excites us and I think can make a big difference for us, and hopefully he does the same again tomorrow night. He's a ball carrier, Joshua, and I think ball retention tonight will be key for Rangers. Not only that, certainly given his cameo last week, he's someone that you don't want to be facing one-on-one, really, if you're a Panathinaikos defender.
Yeah, well, of the 3 or 4 days I was off, which, as Chris will testify to, it always feels about 3 or 4 weeks in a transfer window, catching up with Chris Powell about him, as we mentioned before, who spoke so, managers or coaches who've worked with players tend to speak well when they of them when they join a new club, but he's so complimentary of not only his qualities but what he thought, that the type of player he thought he could become. And he made the comparison of, look, Danny Role's football is different, but similarly Gassama's worked with a young coach who's taught him a lot of tactical fundamentals, understanding the type of runs to make, when to get on the ball. And I thought, while Martin's structure last week, a bit hairy in the first half, wasn't it? There was a few moments where you saw Max Aarons get trapped and Rangers played themselves into a lot of difficulties. However, the benefit I thought you saw, and we wrote about this on the website last Thursday or Friday or Wednesday some point, was how both players arrived onto the ball, the small little runs, Raskin's run to create space for Gassama, giving a bit of separation to score that goal, the way that Finlay Curtis arrives onto that pass in the way he hadn't in the first half. These are the small little automations, which is a word Philippe Clement used, but I don't think we ever really saw that in his football. But that is the type of structure that I think you will see Russell Martin's team play with, and the wingers will then should be able to benefit, should be able to get into these 1v1 situations. And if you can do that semi-regularly, then he will be a hit. As we spoke about at the time, Derek, I think he is more of he wants to shoot more than he creates. But even within that short cameo, you saw the pass he played around the corner. You saw the ball he cut back across the face, a goal that probably should have made it 3-0 if someone had caught on the end of it. And again, that always encourages me about a winger if they don't just want to do one thing, because then by going wide sometimes supports you when you want to go inside, because it gives you that variation. So I'd like, he can play off the right. I'd like to see him off the left, and I think you see with Rangers' interest in Oliver Antman, which we'll get into, and also Mikey Moore as well. You've got a lot of right-footed players there, but while Gassama can play off the right, I'd be surprised tonight if Curtis is off the left and he's off the right. Could be wrong, but that's just my instinct.
Yeah, we'll go through the lineup a little later on, but in terms of Rangers' approach tonight, Martin spoke about that and how he is looking to win this game. Rangers, of course, 2-0 up and in the driving seat. This is what he had to say about that.
Great deal happened in the first half, bit of a reset at half time, so much better in the second half.
Yeah, I think when you have a clear idea and a clear vision of what you want the team to look like and what you want the game to look like, it certainly makes analysing things easier. So we learned as much as we can from that. The same on Saturday with the guys that haven't played so much and the guys that came on. So I think that's the process. We have to analyse, we have to learn, we have to improve, and we have to practice properly, and they've certainly done that. I love the feeling of training this week and the stuff I've seen. So they have to just take that into the game now, and if they do, I really believe it'll be enough.
Any questions for Theo, guys?
Russell, the players need to show real discipline as well tomorrow night in this atmosphere, the heat. Panathinaikos obviously got a guy sent off last week. Is that going to be key?
They need to display courage, discipline, aggression in the right areas, intensity, all of it, and nothing will change. So like, we can talk about the approach for this game, but it's not going to change. We have to be the team we want to be always. I think this football club demands that, and we'll certainly demand that at the start. Listen, later on in the game and stuff like that, you have to manage it as well as you possibly can, depending on the situation. But the approach going into it has certainly not been any different.
How do you see Rangers approaching this, Chris? Because Russell Martin's someone that is very set in his ways, how he likes to play the game. This is a big match for him, stepping into the unknown somewhat because he hasn't ever managed in this competition before on the continent. Protecting a 2-goal lead. Do you try and shut up shop and soak up pressure, hit on the break, or do you go out quite aggressive? How if you're Russell Martin, what are you doing?
I don't think he'll shut up shop. I don't think that's his style. I don't think that's how he wants the team to look. That's not how he wants the game to be played. So like he outlined there, I think it'll be almost the same as last week. I'm sure there will be tweaks to it. You also have to react to different situations within the game. It was interesting. Joe Rodwell spoke to the press after the game last week, and his immediate stance on it was, we're going there to win the game, we're going there to extend the lead rather than defend the lead. And that was an hour after the full-time whistle. I think that's the mentality that Russell Martin is trying to get into the squad. Also, Rodwell, having worked with him before, will know that better than most. They're not going to radically change the way they play in the second leg. I would be surprised. I think we will see a fairly similar approach. In terms of a big night for him, I asked him about that in terms of how he felt and managing at this level for the first time. Really interesting to see how he handles it. There's a lot of focus rightly on his team, on his players. There's a bit of pressure on Russell Martin tonight as well. I think the complexity has shifted a wee bit. Before it, the people saying, Panathinaikos, good side, and Rangers not really ready, and it's still very early. When you then take a 2-0 lead into the second leg, if Rangers were to go out now, that's a very different situation. It would have been gone out before a ball's kicked. So there is a bit of pressure on them tonight, but I do fancy them to get the job done and move into that qualifying round.
Derek, I have a injunction to make. I think this whole thing about he has one system, or he is going to be rigid to a degree, but he even saw it the weekend, but he played a totally different shape in the first half. You know, I don't know what really it was, and I don't know if you'll see it again with Xander Hutton is kind of like, I don't know, Chris, you were there, he was like a three at the back, Oscar Cortez running madly at wing back. And again, Russell Martin's comment there, he says he will manage it somehow later in the game. But I don't have an issue with Rangers going tonight and trying to dominate the ball, because I think this has been their fundamental issue, is this question we've tried to answer for like two or 3 years. Why can they go away in Europe and look good against Olympiacos and then look absolutely terrible at home to like effectively anyone who isn't a big team? because they couldn't dominate the ball. So I think you've got to have some sort of trade-off and some nervy moments. And Rangers relied on luck. They relied on Jack Butland in the first half of last week. But you can't have both, for me, if that makes sense. And I think you will see him vary things, adapt things, play different players. But if the main idea is to have the ball, that's why Rangers haven't succeeded domestically. So if there's a bit of pain because of that, I think that might just need to be faced over the next wee while.
Yeah, someone asked a question, what would Walter do in the comments there? Walter, Blue Nose Sparky gets in touch. Walter would make Rangers very hard to beat, and Rangers would sneak away in the second half and get a crucial, what would have been an away goal back in the day, and they would have won the match and progressed. I would have no concerns if Walter was at the helm. But again, like last week, it's almost stepping into the unknown. Everyone would have, I think, bitten your hand off for a 2-0 lead last week. It's all about seeing the job out now. And I think it would be big for Russell Martin if he can see off Panathinaikos. It certainly would be. And of course, it benefits Rangers on a European front. It would certainly guarantee Europa League group stage football. Now, let's move on to transfer news, because Chris, you asked the manager about Mikey Moore. All being well, it's a move that's scheduled to go through at some point later this week. Straight loan, no obligation or option to buy on the teenager. This is what he had to say when you posed the question to him yesterday.
Mikey Moore from Spurs, is anything you can say on that one?
I think I've said to you all the way along that as soon as it's done, you'll be the first guys to know. There's lots of players we like, lots that we're linked to. He's a really good player, and if at any point he becomes a Rangers player, we will let him know.
So there you go. Not saying too much on it, Chris, but we spoke about Mikey Moore a little bit yesterday, and there are some fans, certainly in social media land, saying, will this hamper Finlay Curtis's development? Certainly some Spurs fans that you hear say that he's a real talent and they expect big things from him. What do you make of it all? Is this someone that the Rangers fans are right to be excited about?
Russell Martin didn't say no, which is the most important thing in that press conference. If he had said no, that would have been a real span on the works. So he didn't say no, and of course the other game, not saying no means yes. I think he's an exciting player. He looks a real talent. I've seen the point about, will this hinder Finlay Curtis, and what does this mean for our academy, and why are Rangers developing another club's asset? Ultimately, Russell Martin needs as many good players in that squad as possible to win the league this season. Rangers Academy does not have a good enough track record of producing players that you can say, let's not bring in another young player. I understand there's maybe a fear of another Premier League loan. A lot of these ones haven't really worked over the years. Back to Warburton time with Adua and Zalalam, and we've seen this type of player, if you like, a young, relatively inexperienced player coming up. It feels different this time, though. I think he's coming into a club that's in a better place. Certainly be playing under a better manager, and I think that it's a deal that makes a lot of sense. Rangers need attacking reinforcements. I asked the manager about that as well, if that was the kind of priority position for them now, and he knows that he needs more strength and depth in those areas. Great to get Gassama in, great to get Finlay Curtis in the squad. Rangers need more than that. You need a squad to win silverware over the course of a season, not just a starting 11. Finlay Curtis isn't going to play 60 games this season. If he did, it would actually be bad for his development. You'd probably burn them out after game 40, and then you'd end up in a Kearney situation where the last 3 months of the season he looks absolutely burst. Just because there's another lone player coming in or another younger player coming in doesn't mean to say that you won't get minutes and won't get an impact out of Curtis or Gassama or whoever else comes in. So I don't really see the negatives in terms of this one, and by all accounts, it sounds this one will be done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Joshua, your thoughts on Mikey Moore? Are you excited at the prospect of him tearing up and down the wing?
Yes. People will not be shocked to know that I'm more in the optimistic wing of this. Our boss, Johnny McFarlane, is not, but we will have that debate on another day. I don't know what his opinion is. He just said to me on the phone yesterday,
Get him on.
wait to hear he's coming on tomorrow, so you can pass it on to him.
Yeah.
For me, Derek, it's like we've had this debate so often with only about, I think it's 60%, 70% of signings will work. Sometimes players will be injured, sometimes they'll start badly. You can't get everything right, especially in a summer like this summer. There is a lot of short-termism, I think, going on at Rangers, and you can see that. There's a lot of let's just get through this season. Now, the argument on the contrary might be, well, if you get into the Champions League playoff, if you can capitalise on Celtic not being particularly strong in the market, and if you know you've got more finance available, you can take that risk. It's kind of uncharted territory compared to what we're used to covering the club. The difference for me with someone like Mikey Moore is you look at the system he played in last season at Spurs. He's one of the most talented young English players. Having 5 wingers, presuming that Rangers get Antman and Moore alongside Cortez, alongside Gassama and Curtis, I think that's fine, especially given Curtis's age. As Chris says, you don't want to burn him out, and I don't think he's ready for that. Let's remember that he's only started 2-3 competitive games in a Rangers shirt. You know, he's not been lined up to be the first choice left winger. He's done really well, taking his opportunity, and all being well will therefore be part of the squad. But Moore is someone who's played in that kind of Postecoglou wide man style, which is similar to how Russell Martin's wide triangles operate on either side. He can play on the right or the left. Quality, obviously, I don't think is an issue. If Russell Martin had Tillman or an Amad Diallo, especially Amad Diallo, would his time at Rangers have been very different? Yeah, I think it would have. It's about creating the best kind of environment for a player, isn't it? And there's a degree of risk because he's really young and whatnot, but he also started for Spurs in a number of Europa League games, has been part of their first team squad since last season. I don't think quality is an issue. And while he's more of a left-sided player, he can play off the right. And if Rangers aren't going to get a left-footed winger in, because Antman is, does play off that right side too, but if they're more heavily weighted towards the left-hand side, then I think someone like Moore and Gassama who can do it on both flanks is important to give you a little bit of variation. And Cortez, because he's done that too, hasn't he?
Yeah. It's 5 not too winger heavy for you, Joshua. There's going to be a lot of unhappy players there, is there not?
I mean, again, look at last season. How many games did you watch Rangers where you thought like they just don't have anything on the bench? They don't have any. And Martin's system, the reason I think you need maybe 2 players to each position. So let's say you've got 2 players in each wing and one more is if you're not going to change the overall style that much, so you might change the system at points. But if you're not going to change the overall style, how do you vary the system? By putting different players into it. So a Gassama is different to an Antman. Antman has higher creation numbers than goal scoring numbers. He wants to hit the byline more than he wants to cut inside. If you're a fullback playing against either of those players, the way that you have to play against Gassama, say for the first 60 minutes, is different to how you have to play against Antman if Rangers are able to get that deal. But as we understand it, there's no bid that's been submitted as of yet, but that there's serious interest in that player. That's where you get your variation for me. So I don't know if Chris disagrees, but this is also a squad you've got to remember that hasn't really had wingers. I mean, when was the last time Rangers had actual wingers? I can't remember.
No, I do like a team with wingers in it. It's exciting, and more width the better for me. So I'm pleased that Rangers are going down this route, I've got to say. You agree, Chris? And just on Antman as well, the latest with regards to that?
On Antman, as Joshua touched on there, as of late yesterday afternoon here, last update we had on it was that there had been no bid or no official bid and also no agreement on that deal. But again, as Josh has said, he's clearly a player that Rangers are interested in, and he's one that they are pursuing, but not as close as has been mooted and suggested elsewhere just a couple of days ago. So one to keep an eye on, and also they'll try and get to the bottom of that one as it unfolds and as there are developments in it. Bigger picture, I think 5 is okay. You look at the number of games the Rangers will potentially have to play once they get through this tie. It guarantees them group stage football in Europe of some description. It's a lot of games. The European campaign, I think, it falls down the pecking order in terms of importance. It's all about the league. So if you have 2 first choice ones, if you like, and 2 that are maybe backup. They can then play on the Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, and your first team ones can go back in at the weekend. I think I mentioned Cherny earlier on. You saw the downside last week of Rangers not having another option on that side. He had to play almost every minute, every week, domestically in Europe. It ran him into the ground and became less and less effective as it goes on. If Rangers can have 4 or 5 different options you can put into different matches that offer you possibilities to change games, to mix and match, to change things up in terms of the style. So ultimately, it goes back to the point I made earlier on. You can't have too many good players. It's not as if they're going to have 8 wingers and every week there's going to be two on the pitch, 2 on the bench, and a handful sitting in the stand or sitting in the living room. I think 5 is okay to carry, especially when there are still doubts over how robust is Finlay Curtis over the course of a season. Is Oscar Cortés robust at all? Mikey Moore at only 17, how much can you really ask him to do too early in his career as well? So it's not a case of you're bringing someone in and you're asking an awful lot of them. If you have those options, I see you can mix and match throughout the course of the season. So 5 for me would be a good number. And if they do get those deals done, I think that ends the business in those wider areas, and we can then move on to another centre back, a left back, and finally decide what's happening at centre forward.
Yes, Heather brings up the last time Rangers had proper out-and-out wingers. She says that Neil McCann and Andre Kanchelskis. So yeah, they were absolutely fantastic on both flanks when they were on top of their game. Right, let's move on to the team for tonight and what we expect it to be. Josh, you said at the top of the show you expect one change. This is your predicted lineup, incidentally. If you get this bang on, I think you will actually be there or thereabouts. Butland in goal, that back 4 of Tavernier, Giga, Suter and Aarons, Rothwell, Raskin and Diomande in the midfield. You've got Curtis on the right-hand side, this time Gassama on the left, and Danilo leading the line. My only issue with that, I'm fine with that. I just have a problem with left back, and I know that Max Aarons on a Sky interview was speaking about that. He says, I think it's very flexible. It's not like a traditional left back. You're still out there and just putting the ball down. You're not still out there and just putting the ball down the channel. It's very different. Tactically, there are no excuses as a player with this setup and this manager. You know exactly what you're doing in each phase of the game, which as a player is something you want. Whether I'm playing on the left or playing on the right, I think I can do a good job there and I feel comfortable there. Each of us are getting used to the way the manager wants us to play, and I think it will improve week to week. So there you go. He was sort of targeted last week, Joshua, Max Aarons. I fully expect Panathinaikos to try and get some joy down Rangers' left-hand side tonight. I'm a tad apprehensive about that. Is that fair?
Is that, do you just mean? Do you mean all is defending, or just like when he's getting the ball?
It just doesn't look comfortable for me. It didn't look too comfortable for me on the left-hand side. I like my left back to be left-footed. I've got to admit.
Yeah,
balance.
Yeah, no, I think definitely that first half you saw Panath. The first kind of 6-7 minutes of the game, in particular that moment where Tavernier and Rothwell play a 1-2 and find Raskin in space. That's what it should look like with the fullbacks moving inside. And Martin's football fundamentally is about where's the free man. So you saw Kelly kick long quite a lot when Middlesbrough pressed high at the weekend. It's not that it always has to be short, but when Rangers started to get trapped on that left-hand side, I agree with you. There's no out until Finlay Curtis made that run in the second half. And that's partly because Suter and Raskin are both, Raskin in particular is so right-footed. I think if you have a Tello Asgard in that position, and even a Gassama who can go round this player more on the outside as opposed to always cutting in field like Curtis generally wants to do, that maybe improves the balance. It was obviously Aaron's, it was his first game there. I agree with Nicky. I thought he was really good in that. It was a brilliant cross. And that probably is the benefit of playing in the same way that you see a lot of managers also obviously play players on the kind of the wrong side, whether it be Raskin or Diomande here. Sometimes a fullback will pop up in those similar positions where they can then play closer to goal and play at better angles because they're on the wrong foot. But I agree with you. If you look at the first half of last week and you presume that Panathinaikos will press a bit more aggressively, then that is Aarons will be able to make as many mistakes as he did in that first half, where he probably got caught in the ball 3 times maybe as he was trying to turn. That said, if Gassama's there, I think he'd have more natural width, and I think that probably helps that whole left-hand side.
Yeah. Would that be the team that you would go with, Chris?
Yes. I am not Josh's Ibrox source. I can reveal that. So if it is right, it didn't come from me. No, I think that's the side. As Josh touched on earlier on, Curtis and Gassama, what side they start on, what side they're more predominantly on. That's probably a toss of the coin. That really just depends how Russell Martin feels. Having woken up this morning, I think both of them can operate off either side. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer in there. The rest of the team, I think it pretty much picks itself. He's not a natural left back. I don't think he was signed to play left back. But while the transfer window is still unfolding and while Ridvan is still at the club and Rangers are still trying to do a bit of business, I think you'll see him start there more often than not. So I'd be really surprised if Shefty comes in on that left side. So I think that will be your Rangers 11 that I'll be watching in action in just a few hours' time.
Yes, interesting point. I've not heard Jack Butland being referred to as this before, but Bob made the point as well. I hope Big Jackie B has the game of his life. It was excellent last week, Joshua. Enjoyed, very insightful interview he gave the last few days as well about his time and his struggles at Rangers, it's fair to say, but need him on form tonight as well.
Yeah, you're not allowed to start calling him Jackie B just as a rule. He was really good. Obviously, it's only one game, isn't it? So I feel like that type of I'm back or judgment that he's there's no other discussion about the number one position. I don't think that's totally gone away.
Yeah.
The way that the window is unfolding for Rangers, they're struggling in some areas to get players out. The interest in Pierce Charles, which is genuine, and we spoke about it previously. If that were to happen, and I don't know of anything close on that personally, but if it were to happen, I think that would be more as a player who's pretty suited to Martin's style of play, not having played with him, but being more comfortable with the ball at his feet to challenge, to maybe eventually succeed. But then you've got Mason Munn, who's just went on loan to Dunfermline, who's really highly rated, as is Rhythm Maguire. Liam Kelly, I think, is a number 2 goalkeeper, did everything you could ask of him last season. So probably another position that could go down to the wire and maybe depends on this next month. But if Butland has a good game tonight, if he does well against Motherwell, I thought he's looked actually all right with the ball at his feet so far and pretty composed and comfortable. It's not the strongest, I don't think it's the strongest part of his game. But when Martin was asked about it, he said the players will always have solutions and maybe they can just be maybe there can be a solution found there in terms of Butland being his number 1 for a while. So, but he'll have to make some big saves tonight, as he did last week, because that tie would have been 1, if not 2-0, if not for his first half.
Yeah. Totally agree. Right, folks, we'll have you covered tonight, as usual, from the Olympic Stadium. We'll be with you when the teams drop, which will be around about 5:45, I'd imagine, UK time, ahead of that 7 p.m. kickoff. Before that, though, those of you, you're in for a treat on the YouTube channel. We will be going live at 10:30 this morning. I'm going to get former Rangers midfielder Charlie Miller on to talk about his brilliant play, which is taking place at the Edinburgh Festival. Billy and Tim featuring live commentary. So we're going to get Charlie on to discuss that and also get him to have a chat about his beloved Rangers as well and what he thinks about the match tonight. So we'll be live on the Extra channel to begin with at 10:30. So you can join us for that if you're an Extra member, and we'll pop it out to everyone a little later on this afternoon. So give you a Rangers review fix before the big kick-off tonight. Right, a big thank you to Joshua and to Chris as ever. Thank you to you all for tuning into the show. Very much appreciated. And we'll chat again soon. Bye for now.